So this video will start chapter 1 and it's on chemistry and it's an introduction on chemistry. So why study chemistry? Because chemistry helps us understand everyday things. For example, at home, if you're cleaning, you know that you cannot mix bleach and ammonia together. And that's because they will react together to form a gaseous or poisonous gas. And so you don't want to breathe that. This would be harmful. So chemistry explains why bleach and ammonia react together, for example. Salt, sometimes table salt is pink. Sometimes it's just white crystals. Chemistry would also explain why you have a foamy reaction when you are mixing vinegar with baking soda, like you see in this beaker. You have a lot of bubbles forming. Chemistry also explains why when you open a Coke that is warm, you know, if you open it, you might see an explosive burst of foam out of the bottle. And so chemistry is able to explain why this is happening. You may have some medications at home, and these have all been manufactured and created based on chemical understanding of the molecules and what they will do within your body. So chemistry is helping understand a lot of things that are, you know, surrounding us. So who is studying chemistry? Chemists, obviously, physicists, biologists, and engineers need to study chemistry. It's a background knowledge that is necessary for those fields. And being a student in Chem 139, you are probably pursuing a STEM field profession. So this is a necessary knowledge. But doctors, nurses, and dentists, pharmacists, physical therapists, and veterinarians, they all take chemistry courses as well. And even though they are dealing with living matter is also matter, and they need to understand how the body works, you know, what molecules you are ingesting will do to you. And there is a lot of chemical reactions happening within you that keep you alive. And so these professions need to understand the chemistry. Firefighters and people who make fireworks, they need to learn about chemistry. You know, all combustion reactions are, you know, chemical reactions. And truck drivers, plumbers, artists, and hairdressers, cooking chefs, they all need to learn chemistry, or, you know, that pertains to the matter they're dealing with, because you know, they will make things react together and they need to understand what's going on. So a lot of professions need to have a basic knowledge of chemistry. So let's focus now on you know, one of the examples we saw in the previous slide. And we had this Coke fizzing very violently. So why is soda pop fizzing like that? So for this, you need to know what are the main ingredients in soda. And so one of the first main ingredients will be water, right? It's a drink with the water as the main solvent. And there's a lot of molecules in there, and the picture here suggests another molecule, and that's the carbon dioxide molecule. There is indeed a lot of carbon dioxide molecules in carbonated beverages, and that's why it's actually fizzing. Chemistry can explain why carbon dioxide will make your drinks fizz. And there is sugar, and sugar will make the drink sweet. So you can see here that the properties of soda are directly related to the properties of these chemicals, right? The soda is sweet because it contains sugar. And the soda fizzes because it contains carbon dioxide. But chemistry can help you understand the connection between the properties of the substance and the particles that compose it. So why is carbon dioxide making the soda fizz? And that's because structure determines properties. And so matter and everything that is named as matter is made of tiny particles or pieces that we call atoms and molecules. And here you have two models of molecules, the carbon dioxide molecule and the water molecule. And you can see they look different, even though they both have oxygen atom. They have a different number of atoms, their structure is different. And so chemists believe that the properties of a substance are determined by the kind, the number, and the relationship between these pieces. And here we know that carbon dioxide is a gas at room temperature, while water is a liquid at room temperature. Well, the structure of carbon dioxide and the structure of water molecules can explain that. So that's what chemistry is interested in, by the connection between the molecules and their properties at the microscopic level. Oh, sorry. So what do chemists do? They try to discover the relationship between the particle structure of matter and the properties of matter we can see. So they try to make a model of the atoms and molecules and make a connection to the microscopic behavior of that matter. So matter. Matter is a general term for a substance for which all physical objects consist of. But the most consistent definition is that matter is anything that has mass and occupies space. Because in the universe, everything can be classified into two things, matter and energy. Matter is anything that has mass and occupies space. And if you have something that is not having a mass and doesn't occupy a space, then you would classify it as energy. Energy is able to propagate into space, but you're not able to measure a volume for it, like for matter. So we said there are different levels of looking at the matter. And so you're most familiar with the microscopic level, which is the level that can be observed with the naked eye. And geologists, for example, study rocks and stones at the microscopic level. The microscopic level is the level that can be observed with a microscope. And scientists use optical microscopes to study tiny animals, plants, bacteria, cells, or crystals at the microscopic level. And then the more narrower level is the particulate level. That's the level of atoms and molecules that we also call the atomic or molecular level. That level, the particulate level, cannot be observed directly, even with the most powerful microscope. And so, for example, when we are doing some nanotechnology, we are manipulating atoms and molecules. And because atoms and molecules are a few nanometers in size, then that's why we call that nanotechnology. When you are able to manipulate atoms and molecules, then you are doing nanotechnology, because you're working at the nanometer level. And that's also called the particulate level. And chemistry is mostly interested in that particulate level, which you cannot see. There is no technology that allows you to see what's going on or observe chemical reactions at the particulate level. So structure determines properties, and you can see here the scale of the universe is showing you the relative size of the macroscopic level versus sorry, microscopic level and particulate level. So in blue is the microscopic level, what you can see with the naked eye. And we are able to see at the, up to the 10 micrometer level, which you can see much better using an optical microscope. And that's the yellow phase here. That can also be observed with the electron microscope or the scanning tunneling microscope. Those last two techniques are also allowing you to see into the particulate level. But you can see molecules, but it's not made to observe atoms or molecules, react. It's only like to take a picture, but you cannot observe them moving around. So let's look at the scale of the universe. I have this interactive website here that will allow us to go down from the microscopic level to the microscopic level to the particulate level. So here we're starting at the microscopic level, where you see the human size here, beach ball and a big bird. And so we will zoom in. And so here you see it's 1 meter. The gray circle represents 1 meter. So we will move into the circle and observe. So at that microscopic level, it's everyday objects that you can observe. Then still we can see small animals, worms, eggs. And then that's a square inch here. You see the microwave wavelengths, they have that size. And if we zoom in, you can see smaller insects, seeds, grains of rice, until you reach the millimeter. The gray circle here represents the millimeter. At the millimeter level, you can see grains of salt, a grain of sand, dust mites. The largest bacteria could be observed there too. A human hair, the brown thing here is a human hair. Thickness of a paper, about 1/10 of a millimeter. That gray circle is a millimeter. And a human egg is also about 1/10 of a millimeter. And so that gray disk represents the smallest thing that is visible to the naked eye, right? We cannot see smaller than that. And so for this, then you need an optical microscope to be able to observe skin cells in details, silk fiber, white blood cells, red blood cells, and chloroplast, cell nucleus, chromosomes, mitochondrions, E. coli, clay particle is there, and then the wavelengths, red light wavelengths and violet light wavelengths, which are visible to the naked eyes. Those colors are visible to the naked eyes. And now we reach the micrometer. 1 micrometer is represented by the gray circle here, still observable by the microscope. And at that level, you have the largest viruses, macrophages. And so the disk, the gray disk, is the smallest thing visible to an optical microscope. So you see that the HIV virus here is not really observable by an optical microscope. The hepatitis B virus. Here, transistor gates are that small, and we manufacture those. And they are, your electronic devices are full of those transistor gates. And you can see it's almost at the size of the DNA and phospholipid bilayer. And so we keep zooming in and we see a single phospholipid. carbon nanotubes, the buckyball, and the glucose molecule. So we'll stop there because we have reached the nanometer level, the particulate level, where you see single atoms. So you also have the X-ray wavelengths here. But you see here, we have a cesium atom represented, a carbon atom represented, and then the water molecule. And let me zoom in. So that's gray circle represents 1 nanometer. So we are at the nanometer level now, and we start to see atoms and molecules. And so the gray disk here shows the smallest thing visible to an electron microscope. So you can see atoms with the electron microscope, but it's for stationary viewing. It's not for observing a chemical reaction happening, for example. And the smallest atoms are the hydrogen atom or the helium atom here. So let's finish with what is chemistry, what is the best definition for chemistry. Chemistry is the study of matter and energy and the interaction between them. I told you anything in the universe can be classified as matter and energy. And energy is more specifically studied by physics. Matter possesses energy and matter is affected by energy. So we will have to study some level of energy and especially the interaction between the energy and matter, because that affects matter a lot. So energy matters even in chemistry. But more particularly, chemistry tends to focus on the properties of substances and the interaction between different types of matter, particularly reactions that involve electrons. And so finally, chemistry is an empirical science, which means empirical means it's based on observations and experiments. It's not, taken out of logic or theories. Theories in chemistry have been based on observations and experiment.